Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie. There's a brand new Thanos preview for Avengers Endgame that we have to break down, and you've had a whole bunch of WTF questions about Captain Marvel, so I added that to this too. We'll talk about Thanos, then we'll talk about Captain Marvel stuff. The IMAX ticket giveaway is still going on. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your biggest Avengers Endgame questions on the video. You notice that Thanos is finally wearing his full suit of armor for those of you that were disappointed that he did not fight them in his armor during Avengers Infinity War. He has the Infinity Gauntlet, his arm isn't all mangled, the gauntlet isn't partially melted, all 6 Infinity Stones look perfect. It's as if he completely healed his arm and repaired all the damage to the gauntlet since the end of Avengers Infinity War. Whereas a lot of websites are probably incorrectly speculating they travel back in time and that's why it's a perfect gauntlet, because in present day, it's still all messed up. What I really think is going on with this is that they made it look like this, all nice and shiny, for the magazine cover. They're just purposefully being inaccurate and making him look perfect because they were worried that showing Thanos with a mangled arm and a partially melted gauntlet would scare people away from buying the magazine. Like, put something really horrific on the cover and people won't buy as many of the magazines. I don't think that they put him on the cover here to give you a hot scoop about Thanos during Avengers Endgame. I think they just put him here to sell more magazines. Based on the Captain Marvel footage and the other new scenes of that first Thanos rematch during the Avengers Endgame trailer with Cap and Nebula, Rocket, Rhodey, it's more likely that their early plan right after Captain Marvel arrives, like you have this scene here with her standoff with Thor, is that they go straight for Thanos. That happens pretty early in the movie. I did a video for those extra Captain Marvel battle planning scenes last week. They screened at a different Disney investors meeting. There was a whole bunch of extra footage. I'll link that video at the end of this. But during those scenes, this smaller group of Avengers, like everybody isn't here, they decide to go find Thanos on his new version of Titan that he created at the end of Infinity War. The Russos just call it Titan 2, his farm here. They fight him there, but they don't have Thor, Iron Man, or the Hulk, and it's pretty clear from the Captain America footage that they lose, and they lose hard. So when they would be fighting him there, the gauntlet would still be melted, his arm would still be messed up, but he still has all 6 Infinity Stones and he can still use the Infinity Gauntlet, and he's had all these months or however many weeks it's been since the snap to perfect how he can use it. The Russos explained during Infinity War there's a certain learning curve with using each of the different Infinity Stones' powers in combination with each other. If you watch the commentary for Infinity War, during the fight on Titan, the Russos say that you can see Thanos learning how to use the Infinity Stones while he's fighting them. So by the end of that fight, he's way more proficient in using the gauntlet than he was at the beginning. So if it took him less than a couple days to figure out how to snap everyone using all 6 stones in combination, then think about how much better he is using it later in the timeline when they come back to fight him again for the first time. Based on the way that the quantum realm and quantum energy is so important to the Avengers fixing everything ultimately by the end of Avengers Endgame, there's a theory that early in the movie, one of Thanos' measures of last resort is to destroy the Infinity Gauntlet in present day so that the Avengers can't do the exact same thing that they did during the first movie and just try and steal it right off of his hand. That would actually be a pretty smart way to go after him. Just try to get the gauntlet and unsnap everyone, so the easiest way Thanos could prevent that from happening is to destroy the gauntlet himself. But hopefully that explains what's going on with Thanos. Yes, he will wear his full suit of armor. That's why they show it to you on the Scarecrow during the Avengers Endgame trailer. They just want to let you know that it's still around, still going to be a big thing. But yeah, his arm is still super messed up and the gauntlet is still kind of melty. There were a lot of WTF questions about Captain Marvel after the Captain Marvel movie and Captain Marvel during Avengers Endgame, like what's she going to be doing? What are they going to use her for? So these are just the top 10 that I broke down. Careful for spoilers if you have not seen the Captain Marvel movie, starting with number 10. What is Captain Marvel's weakness? She's super powerful, that's great, but it creates a lot of story problems when a character has no weaknesses. Kevin Feige confirmed this after the movie came out. He said that she does have a weakness, but for the purposes of the Captain Marvel movie, what they wanted to do at the end of that was just show her unchained, so you won't actually see her weaknesses till Avengers Endgame. So it gives them a really surprise twist for Avengers Endgame when she isn't so powerful against Thanos. If you're not familiar with how her powers work in the comics, she absorbs energy. That's how she goes into binary form. Being in binary form drains that power very quickly, so the only way for her to maintain that level of power is to continually absorb energy at a great enough level. When her energy levels are much lower, she's much weaker. If she were to fight Thanos, as long as Thanos didn't blast her with enough energy that she could absorb and just use physical damage, like literally just pounded her, he could block a lot of her attacks and then eventually just wear her down. Number 9. What happened to the Supreme Intelligence in the last 20 years? It's artificial intelligence in the movie, which makes it functionally immortal. So unless someone like Galactus completely culled their home world, it's probably still alive, still hates Captain Marvel, and is still plotting other ways to enhance the Kree race and thwart Captain Marvel's attempts to pacify their part of the galaxy. Because that's what she's been doing for the last 20 years, trying to stop the Kree-Skrull War. Do not be surprised if the Supreme Intelligence comes back during the Captain Marvel sequel. I do not expect to see it during Avengers Endgame, though. That would be a big surprise. Number 8. Why did Nick Fury use the SHIELD acronym in the 90s when Coulson didn't use it till the events of the Iron Man movies after 2008? They made a whole joke during the movie about the full title being super long. Wow, you really need to find a way to shorten that. Yeah, we're working on it.
I'm Agent Phil Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
That's quite a mouthful.
I know. We're working on it. Agent Coulson.
Oh, yeah. The guy from the,
Strategic Homeland Intervention
right,
Enforcement and Logistics Division.
God, you need a new name for that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
The way I explain this is that Coulson at that time was just being overly formal with Pepper and Iron Man, and within the organization, people just unofficially refer to it as SHIELD. So it'd be like someone using your formal name and then using a contraction. Like my real name is Charles, but most people call me Charlie. But there are still people that call me Charles if they're being really formal. It's not so much a continuity problem as it is them sort of like bending over backwards just a little bit because the tone of the Captain Marvel movie was a little bit lighter. Speaking of tone, number 7, why did Nick Fury pump up how he lost his eye during Captain America Winter Soldier so much if it was going to wind up being used for a joke during the Captain Marvel movie? Most likely answer for this is that the Russos were making a much darker, more serious political thriller movie. Winter Soldier was a way darker movie, so the Nick Fury character was written to be much darker during that. Everything about him was more hardcore. So the way he lost his eye was written as if it were a really hardcore moment in his backstory. But because the Captain Marvel movie needed a much fresher, more comedic Nick Fury to balance out Captain Marvel's more stoic character, everything about Nick Fury was written to be more comedic. Had Captain Marvel been a really dark political thriller movie just like Winter Soldier, then we probably would have seen him lose his eye in some really gruesome fight. But again, I think it's just a tone thing. They just wanted it to be a lighter film in general. So number 6, what happened to Goose the Cat after the events of the Captain Marvel movie after he puked the Tesseract back up? Even though this comedic version of Nick Fury in the past seemingly was a cat person, that was also a bit of a joke people were surprised by. Nick Fury, cat person? He seems so hardcore in present day. After Goose puked the Tesseract up, he took the Tesseract back to Project Pegasus so they could continue studying it. He also probably took Goose the Cat back to Project Pegasus, where he had been living for this whole time since Mar-Vell died. The only reason that he was keeping him as a pet, so to speak, or making it look like it was his pet, was to keep an eye on the Tesseract, which he apparently did not tell Coulson about, because Coulson asked about the Tesseract and Nick Fury's like, I'm sure it'll resurface at some point, and just looks over at Goose the Cat sitting on his little cat bed. We don't know how long the Flurkin race lives, but I'm assuming that unless we see him in Avengers Endgame, he's since died of old age, and if Captain Marvel still has a Goose Cat in the Captain Marvel sequel, it will probably be a new cat, not the same one. So obvious next question, number 5, will Goose the Cat appear during Avengers Endgame? And I say probably not. But number 4, will Maria Rambeau or Monica Rambeau show up in present day during Avengers Endgame, and will Monica Rambeau get her comic book powers in present day? She'd be in her late 20s, pretty prime age for a new actor to come into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I'm guessing that they probably won't show back up again until the Captain Marvel sequel. And because her relationship with Maria Rambeau was so strong, even though she'd be much, much older in present day, maybe she's a colonel or a general or something like that, but I do think that they will come back during the Captain Marvel sequel. There were too many very obvious setup lines of dialogue and foreshadowing for Monica Rambeau's character that she would eventually become something really great for her to not come back in the future. 3, even bigger one, will Marvel bring back the Skrulls for Secret Invasion movie? Because they were not super evil during the Captain Marvel movie. It was a big swerve on their comic book characters. Kevin Feige's official statements were that they wanted to undercut people's expectations of the Skrulls. They wanted to not do the super obvious thing. But the way he explained Secret Invasion in the future is that he said, just like any other space-based race that you would encounter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are good Skrulls that we met during the Captain Marvel movie. There are also evil Skrulls that would use their abilities to do really bad things. So that was him sort of winking, saying, yes, we will see in the future. But I think that they wouldn't do Secret Invasion unless they were going to do it as a big Avengers film, which would be Avengers 5 or Avengers 6, sometime in the next several years. We can talk about those other future Avengers movies because the Fox Disney deal is supposed to close next week, which means they get all the X-Men and all the Fantastic Four IP, which means that at some point, one of those big Avengers films will be the merging of some of that IP and the crossing characters over, but that's way, way down the road, so don't worry too much about that right now. Number 2, why didn't Nick Fury call Captain Marvel during the first Avengers movie when there was a full-blown Chitauri invasion of Earth in New York? This is where we get into a little bit of backbending. Kevin Feige's official statement was that, well, it's because it was only supposed to be a measure of last resort if there was no other option. And at the time, Nick Fury was enacting the Avengers initiative, forming the team for the first time. So had they lost at the end of that movie, then Nick Fury would have called him. But that would have been a bummer way to start out the Avengers franchise. Very first movie, first time ever seeing them together on screen, boom, they get their asses handed to them. The other video that I did about the Captain Marvel scenes during this moment here where they're meeting directly addresses that. Why weren't you here before? We could have used you, so I'll link that video at the end of this. Number 1 though, obvious big question that everyone's had since seeing the latest Avengers Endgame trailer. What will Captain Marvel's role in Avengers Endgame be? What are they going to use her for if they set her up to be so powerful? Right now, based on the footage we've seen and the reports from the other scenes that they've screened, mostly space-based storyline stuff. Early prediction, like assembling a giant space armada with a reformed version of the Nova Corps or other space-based races, anyone she can get to fight the Chitauri, which they are bringing back for the movie. So the Chitauri is sort of like a bland space-based evil villain race. You obviously would need someone to fight that. What did Captain Marvel do for the last 10 or so minutes of her film? She just spent all that time in space blowing up Ronin's ships. So that's probably what she's going to spend most of her time doing during Avengers Endgame. But yes, of course, I think that she's probably going to go toe-to-toe with Thanos. The more interesting twist, though, like I said, would be is she lost because Kevin Feige said we won't learn about her weakness until Avengers Endgame. Post all your big Avengers Endgame questions in the comments, and what'll happen is there'll be more Marvel happening the next couple of days. So while you wait for everything, click here to rewatch the Avengers Endgame trailer a billion more times and all my Easter eggs, and click here to learn about all those extra Captain Marvel scenes from Avengers Endgame that do not appear in the trailer. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.